In our gospel reading today, Jesus is transformed. His appearance is transfigured. His figure is changed, as we heard in the children's message, changed. Jesus has this moment, and it changes his appearance, and I think it changes the disciples too. They're up on a mountaintop, and they see Jesus in a whole new light. They recognize the divinity that shines forth from him in a way so potent, they see it in his body. And they take that with them down from the mountaintop and into their lives, forever having been changed by that experience. I wonder if you have had any mountaintop experiences in your lives. Have you had any moments of profound seeing where you saw God clearly or more clearly than usual? Or perhaps have you had moments of deep and overflowing joy that go beyond typical happy or thankful, but that just overflow your person such that you feel connected to all things? One of the mountaintop experiences that come to mind for me was an experience playing in the St. Olaf College Orchestra when I was in college. We would go on tour to different places around the country and play the same concert again and again, such that we became very, very good at that particular concert. And we could basically play it in our sleep. And so we were able to look up at one another and to become one being as we played the music together. We were able to get out of our own heads and pour our hearts into the music that we were playing and fill the space and let our emotions overflow and the connection that we felt deepen. I wonder if you have had any mountaintop experiences. I bet you have.
We've all had these mountaintop moments where the presence of God is so clear and bright that it changed us forever. Evan had one of those moments. Where's Evan? He had one of those moments at the 2024 ELCA youth gathering. He arrived with questions and not a little doubt, but he left knowing deep in his bones that he is beloved, that God has called him to something more. Ever since that trip, he said, I've never felt more in touch with God and more inspired by my faith. Mountaintop moments transform every atom of our beings, but we can't stay there. Jesus didn't. The disciples didn't. We are called to take what we have seen and bring it down into the world, into the work of love and discipleship.
Mountaintop experiences change us. But sometimes it is not the moments of joy in our life that change us the most. Sometimes it's the moments that, as the psalmist puts it, we walk through the valley of death. This reminds me of the story that Dwight shared earlier in our stewardship season, where he shared a time where he and his family walked through the valley of death, a time when their baby children were in the hospital and they needed God's care more than ever. On one particularly rough night, he wrote and told us in worship, before going to sleep that night, we prayed together. We asked God to help us get through this scary situation. As Dwight reflects now on that time in his life in the valley of death, he realizes that God had taken him and his family into God's arms and carried us through that difficult night. God carried him through this part of his life, just like God carries the person in the poem, the footprints in the sand, during a difficult part of their life. These moments change us too. These moments in the valley, these moments change us and help us to see God in the depths of suffering and help us to recognize God's presence that is with us profoundly always.
But God is also found in our journeys. Chuck's story is one such journey of finding God through music, through love of a flute player, through the steady presence of grace. Like the disciples on the road to Emmaus in the Gospel of Luke, we don't always recognize God's presence in the moment, but when we look back, we see it. God was there all along. Our lives are filled with these God moments. We don't walk alone. We have each other. We have this church. We have God who walks beside us every step of the way.
As we journey throughout our lives, God is with us in every step and in every moment of the journey, even when we don't realize. But sometimes along that journey, we need places of respite, safe havens that we can return to, that we know are a safe place for us, a sanctuary for our hearts. I'm learning a little bit more in my own study about the Celtic tradition of Christianity and the Celtic tradition that dates back even past beyond Christianity. I'm learning about the way that trees and groves of trees served as sanctuary places for people in Britain. People would come to these sacred trees and understand that when they met with others, even enemies, under those sacred trees, this would be a place where no violence would happen, where all instruments of war would be set aside. They could come to these sacred groves and they could be together in peace, because we all need that. We need a place that is free of the world, that can be a safe haven. And out of those places grew peace agreements, grew understanding across cultures. Those places became places of worship because of the holiness that happened there and the safety that was offered. I think of the story that Robert Hawthorne shared with us also during our stewardship season. He's a relatively new member. He is the father of a young man who lives with a disability, and he's also a high school teacher. He told us that he teaches a lot of students who identify as LGBTQ. He says, where I go to church matters. He and his wife had been talking about finding a new church home that we could feel more at home with, a church that was a welcoming community for all. They found that place, that safe haven, that sacred grove of trees here at St. Andrew. And Robert said that disability isn't always easy to understand, it isn't always easy to interact with, and yet we still are welcome here. And we became certain that St. Andrew was a place that we could call home. His family has found a sacred grove here, a place of welcome where there is not the violence and the judgment that the world brings, a place where he can return to again and again on his journey.
Mountaintops, valleys, long roads, places of refuge, these are the landscapes of our faith. Some of us are in seasons of joy, some of us in seasons of struggle, some of us are journeying, asking questions and seeking, and some of us are finding sanctuary for our weary souls. St. Andrew is a place where all of this comes together, where God meets all of us. God's activity is alive in this place. This is a big part of why I choose to come here and to give. I give to help support the community where God is active. I want our worship and our many ministries to one another and to the wider world to continue and to thrive. This is God's transforming work.
I also give because I want to contribute to that transformation that happens in this community, to the ways that I continue to be transformed and transfigured through community with you, the ways that we transform one another, and the ways that we transform the wider world. I'm also aware that the act of giving itself is a transformational act for me, and I have heard for others as well. God helps us let go of the ways that we cling to the things in this world. We all have a tendency to cling to our material resources, to the things that we think will keep us safe and secure. But ultimately, we know that all of these things belong to God, and they are intended both for us and for the wider community. They are intended to flow through the community, not to be shored up within one family and hoarded so that others don't have enough. Through giving, we learn to release and to hold things more lightly and to give them to God. We are able to participate in this upward spiral of joy. I think of the loaves and fishes story and the way that the more people shared what they had, the more there was to share. And the way that they actually had more than enough even when they thought they didn't have enough. The imagery of that story is captured in our intent card counter in the back as we gather loaves and fishes together in the form of intent cards today. I give because I also want to be part of that cycle, that upward spiral of generosity that begets more generosity, and there's just more and more love and giving to go around in the community. I want to participate in that. I invite you to take part in that process today as well.
Do you mind if I start?
Yes, please do.
This is from Dana and I. Here's our intent card. I invite you all to come up. Join me.
The ushers will invite you forward to submit your intent card during the music.